Okay, as you can see, I'm wearing my Devonte Adams Las Vegas Raiders jersey. So today we're going to be talking about the NFL and specifically the playoffs. Wild card round starts tomorrow, which is always a very exciting time. So I wanted to give my thoughts on who I think is going to be the winners in not only the wild card round, but for the whole NFL playoffs, and give my Super Bowl winner as well at the end. So this year's NFL playoffs should be very interesting. The wild card round specifically is always full of a lot of surprises. So let's get right into the AFC side. We got the Houston Texans that are taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. So this is an interesting one. Most people have the Chargers winning by a lot, and I personally think the Chargers are a little overrated by some, and that the Texans are maybe even a little underrated by some. So I think it's going to be a really close game, but I do still have the Chargers moving on to play the Chiefs. But the Houston Texans, I do believe, will put up a good fight. CJ Stroud is a good quarterback, and he should put up a good fight against the Chargers, but I have the Chargers being victorious. Next, we have the Buffalo Bills versus the Denver Broncos. This is going to be Bo Nix's first appearance in the NFL playoffs. Should be a decent game, hopefully, but let's be honest. Bo Nix, in his rookie year, will not be beating the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion. The Bills, they look pretty good. Even losing guys like Stephon Diggs in the offseason hasn't slowed them down. They're looking like a wagon, and I absolutely have them beating the Denver Broncos in the wild card round. Next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one, I don't think it's going to be relatively close. The Ravens have a two-headed monster of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, who will absolutely be running it down Pittsburgh's throat. Pittsburgh has started to play kind of poor at the end of the season, which does not bode well coming into a playoff game against a divisional rival who seems to be heating up, and all the stats, the underlying stats, back up that the Ravens are just away, and they're going to be a tough out for any team. So that's the wild card round. For the divisional round, that leaves the Chiefs to play the LA Chargers. And in this one, this is a really interesting one. Herbert versus Mahomes always seems to be a good matchup. Again, another divisional game here with both of these teams in the AFC West. I do have the Chiefs winning. The Chiefs, they find a way. Even in most games this season, it looked like they were going to lose, but they found a way. And I have them doing that against the Chargers as well, who have been a good story this year with the new coach. But I see them falling to the Kansas City Chiefs. So the other game is the Buffalo Bills versus the Baltimore Ravens. This could very well be the most entertaining game of the entire playoffs. Both these teams are so dynamic. Their offenses are very strong. The quarterback play, probably two of the top five, maybe you could argue top three in the whole NFL going at it. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, should be a good one. I have the Baltimore Ravens beating the Buffalo Bills. Baltimore looks like an absolute wagon. Again, that running game of Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, it's so tough to stop. So I have Baltimore meeting the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Conference Championship. So this one could go either way, really. I do have KC, again, pulling ahead of the Baltimore Ravens. KC always finds a way. I have them finding a way here as well. Last year, Kansas City took care of business against Baltimore, and I have them doing the same thing. It's so hard to get a bet against Patrick Mahomes. He's such an elite talent. Not to mention guys like Travis Kelce and Chris Jones on the defensive side of things. It's going to be an awesome game no matter what, but I do have Kansas City moving on to play in the Super Bowl again. Now going over to the NFC side of things, NFC is quite interesting. I do not believe it is nearly as strong as the AFC is, but starting out, we have the LA Rams versus the Minnesota Vikings. So Minnesota has been such a great story this year. They've got 14 wins, which is just incredible considering they're not even the top seed in their division, and 14 wins is going to make them have a road game against LA. Now this game is one that I have as a huge upset. I have the LA Rams taking care of business at home and beating the Vikings. The Vikings have had an absolute Cinderella story of a run this year, and that's awesome for them considering the quarterback J.J. McCarthy that they drafted in the first round was out before the season even started. They turned to journeyman Sam Darnold, who of course was a high draft pick, but has kind of been a mediocre quarterback at best throughout his NFL tenure until this year, where he has looked very well. But I do have the Rams and Matt Stafford with his experience coming out on top over the Vikings. Next, we have the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Green Bay Packers. This should be an interesting matchup. Sounds like Jordan Love is healthy, but Philadelphia, in my opinion, is the better all-around team. I like Jalen Hurts more than I like Jordan Love, and I have the Eagles beating the Green Bay Packers in this one. Next up, we have Tampa Bay versus Washington. Now, Baker Mayfield and Jaden Daniels going at it will be a great affair. I have Jaden Daniels in his first ever playoff game in the NFL beating Baker Mayfield's Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Should be an interesting one. I could see it going either way. I have Washington there. Now, moving on to the divisional round, we got the Detroit Lions versus the LA Rams. Let's face it, Detroit looks like an absolute wagon. This is a team that all season has looked like they're destined to go on a Super Bowl run, and I do have them beating the LA Rams. Dan Campbell has those Lions playing phenomenal, and going forward on fourth down works for them most of the time, and I think it's going to work for them in this game too. I have them beating the Rams. On the other side, we have the Philadelphia Eagles playing the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels has had a great season, probably the Rookie of the Year on the offensive side, but I have him and the Washington Commanders falling to the Philadelphia Eagles. Should be a great game as well, but I have the Eagles winning. There's a lot of experience there. They ended really strong in the regular season, and I have them meeting the Detroit Lions in the NFC Championship game. So, Detroit versus Philadelphia. What a matchup. I have Detroit winning. Detroit, again, guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, and even though a guy like Aiden Hutchinson is out with injury, it's not going to matter for Detroit. In my opinion, they're making their way to the Super Bowl. Very happy for the city of Detroit and their fans. They've suffered a long time, but they're in the Super Bowl, finally. So that leaves us with Detroit and Kansas City in the Super Bowl. What a matchup this would be. Patrick Mahomes back in the Super Bowl against a young up-and-coming team like the Detroit Lions led by Jared Goff and head coach Dan Campbell. This one, really, it's a coin flip. I have the Kansas City Chiefs three-peating. First time it's ever done in the NFL. I think it's this year. Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes wins another one. I got Mahomes as the MVP of the Super Bowl, and unfortunately, the Chiefs winning the whole thing. They just find a way, no matter what. Like their games against the Raiders, where the Raiders find a way to fumble it when they have an easy opportunity to win it, or when the Broncos had a field goal to win it. Somehow it gets blocked. They just find a way, no matter what. They find a way. Andy Reid and company always find a way. Sometimes it sucks, but that's okay. That's my playoff bracket. Kansas City winning the whole thing again, but Detroit gives them a run for their money. And I'll make it even spicier. I say it's an overtime Super Bowl game again. Now that would be something.